In 1973, they cut a scene from The Exorcist so disturbing that audiences who saw it fainted. For 27 years, movie bosses kept it hidden from the world. The girl who played Regan broke her back filming it. The scene was so evil that a fire destroyed everything on set, except the room where they shot it. Even scarier, 9 people connected to the movie died after filming. Now, the spider walk scene that Hollywood tried to bury has finally been revealed, and it's more horrifying than anyone imagined. The story of The Exorcist started back in 1949. Roland, later identified as Ronald Edwin Hunkeler, was a 14-year-old boy from Cottage City, Maryland. His life took a terrifying turn after he started using a Ouija board, a gift from his aunt, who passed away not long after. Soon, strange things started happening in his home. His family heard scratching noises coming from the walls. Furniture moved on its own. Objects flew across rooms with no explanation. Desperate for help, his parents turned to their Lutheran pastor, Reverend Luther Miles Schulze. He didn't just listen to their stories. He spent a night in their home and saw the disturbances himself. Convinced something unnatural was happening, he advised them to seek help from the Catholic Church. That's when Father Albert Hughes entered the picture. He attempted an exorcism at Georgetown University Hospital, but things spiraled out of control. In the middle of the ritual, Roland broke free and slashed Hughes with a broken bed spring, leaving the priest with wounds that needed over 100 stitches. As the days passed, Roland's condition worsened. He spoke in Latin, a language he had never learned. He reacted violently to religious objects and had sudden outbursts that his family could not control. Hoping to escape whatever had taken hold of their son, his parents moved him to St. Louis. But the disturbances followed. This time, 2 Jesuit priests, Father William Bodern and Father Raymond Bishop, took charge of the case. Over the next 6 weeks, they performed more than 30 exorcism sessions in a hospital and a church. Witnesses claimed to see words like evil and hell appear as red welts on Roland's skin. The final exorcism was the most intense. Witnesses said they heard a loud noise like a gunshot as Roland's body convulsed violently. Then, just as suddenly, he went still. The ordeal was over. When he woke up, he had no memory of what had happened. He went on to live a normal life. Skeptics later debated whether this was a true case of possession or a psychological condition, but the events inspired William Peter Blatty to write The Exorcist. Blatty first learned about Roland Doe's case in 1949 while studying at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Local newspapers had reported on the exorcism, and Jesuit priests at Georgetown openly discussed it. Blatty was fascinated. He wasn't just interested in horror. He wanted to explore the deeper battle between faith and doubt. At the time, the United States was becoming more secular. Traditional beliefs were being questioned. Blatty saw The Exorcist as a way to challenge that shift. He didn't just want to scare people. He wanted them to think about good and evil, belief and disbelief. But Roland Doe's case wasn't the only real-life event that shaped The Exorcist. Blatty also drew inspiration from the Loudun possessions of 1634, one of history's most infamous cases of alleged demonic possession. The incident involved a group of Ursuline nuns in Loudun, France, who claimed they were possessed by demons summoned by a priest named Urbain Grandier. The case became a political and religious spectacle. Grandier, accused of sorcery, was convicted and burned at the stake despite a lack of real evidence. The Loudun possessions fascinated Blatty because they showed how fear and hysteria could take over an entire society. The possessed nuns displayed behaviors eerily similar to those reported centuries later in cases like Roland Doe's. They spoke in unknown languages. They had violent fits. They reacted aggressively to religious objects. Blatty saw clear connections between the two cases and incorporated elements of both into The Exorcist. Some of the most disturbing scenes in The Exorcist can be traced back to Loudun. The infamous crucifix scene echoes reports of the possessed nuns displaying disturbing sexual behaviors during their exorcisms. By blending history with modern events, Blatty made his story feel real. That was his goal. He wanted his audience to wonder if the story could actually happen. But to Blatty, The Exorcist was never just a horror story. He was a devout Catholic, and he saw his novel as an argument for faith. He believed that if people could be made to fear the devil, they might also be forced to acknowledge the existence of God. This idea shaped the novel's core themes. Father Karras, one of the main characters, struggles with his faith throughout the story. He questions whether possession is real or just a mental illness. His skepticism mirrors the doubts that Blatty hoped his audience would confront. On the other hand, Father Merrin represents unwavering belief, showing that faith can be a source of strength in the face of evil. When The Exorcist was published in 1971, it became an instant phenomenon. It sold over 13 million copies in its first year. The story didn't just terrify people, it sparked debates about faith, evil, and the supernatural. The 1973 film adaptation only deepened those discussions. William Friedkin was not the first choice to direct The Exorcist. Warner Brothers had already hired Mark Rydell, but William Peter Blatty, the book's author and the film's producer, refused to accept anyone but Friedkin. He had just won an Academy Award for The French Connection in 1971 and was known for his gritty, documentary-style filmmaking. Blatty believed that approach would make the supernatural horror feel terrifyingly real. He fought the studio and won. Friedkin was hired, and his obsession with realism would shape every part of the film. He wanted audiences to believe in what they were seeing. To create the chilling exorcism scenes, he installed a refrigeration system on set, dropping the temperature to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. Actors could see their breath on camera, but they also had to endure freezing conditions for hours. Friedkin refused to rely on post-production tricks. He demanded long takes and natural lighting, and to get authentic reactions, he went to extreme lengths. He fired guns without warning to startle actors. He yanked chairs out from under them. He even slapped a real priest across the face to make sure his expression looked right. His methods were harsh, but they worked. The film earned 10 Academy Award nominations and became one of the most influential horror movies of all time. Casting was just as intense. Warner Brothers wanted a major star for Chris McNeil, Regan's mother. Audrey Hepburn was interested, but only if the film was shot in Rome, where she lived. That was not an option. Anne Bancroft declined because she was pregnant. Jane Fonda refused, calling the film capitalist rip-off bullshit in a telegram. Ellen Burstyn, who was not as famous as the others, fought for the role. She convinced Friedkin that she understood the character better than anyone else. Her performance was powerful and emotional. She earned an Academy Award nomination and redefined how horror films portrayed mothers. Father Damien Karras was another difficult role to cast. Warner Brothers suggested Jack Nicholson, Paul Newman, and Stacy Keach, but Friedkin wanted someone who looked like a man struggling with faith, not a movie star. Jason Miller, a playwright with no film experience, read the book and immediately told Friedkin, "I am Father Karras." Friedkin was intrigued, but had already signed Keach. After seeing Miller's screen test, he changed his mind. He bought out Keach's contract and took a gamble on Miller. It paid off. His performance was deeply moving and earned him an Academy Award nomination. Finding Regan McNeil was even harder. More than 600 girls auditioned. The role required intense physical and emotional endurance. Then they found Linda Blair. She was only 14, but had a natural presence that impressed Friedkin. He believed she could handle the extreme demands of the role, but the experience would leave her with lasting scars. The possession scenes were brutal. CGI did not exist, so everything had to be done physically. In one scene, Regan is violently thrown around on a mechanical bed. The rig malfunctioned, slamming Blair against the structure. She fractured her spine. Her screams of pain were real, but Friedkin thought she was acting and kept them in the final cut. She later developed scoliosis and suffered from chronic pain for the rest of her life. Despite this, her performance was unforgettable. She won a Golden Globe and was nominated for an Academy Award, becoming one of the most iconic horror actresses of all time. Ellen Burstyn suffered as well. In one scene, Chris McNeil is thrown across the room by her possessed daughter. Burstyn was attached to a wire, and warned the crew not to pull too hard. They ignored her. The force of the stunt fractured her coccyx. Her scream in that moment was real. She was in excruciating pain, but Friedkin kept filming. That footage made it into the final movie. The injury left her with permanent back problems. Everything about The Exorcist pushed boundaries. The cast was pushed to their physical and emotional limits. Friedkin's harsh methods created real fear on screen. The Exorcist opened in theaters on December 26, 1973. At first, it played in just 25 locations across the United States, but that small release only made audiences more desperate to see it. People lined up for hours in freezing temperatures. In Montreal, moviegoers waited outside at 4 a.m. in the snow just to get tickets. Ellen Burstyn, one of the film's stars, later said she saw news footage of the massive crowds and realized this was no ordinary horror movie. This was something bigger. Warner Brothers took a huge risk by releasing the film this way. Instead of sharing ticket sales with theaters, they rented out cinemas and kept all the profits. This method, called four-walling, was almost unheard of for a big-budget film, but it worked. Every showing sold out. People couldn't stop talking about it, and word spread fast. As demand grew, Warner Brothers rushed to expand the release. By the end of its original run, The Exorcist had made $193 million in the US and $441 million worldwide. Adjusted for inflation, that's equal to $9.43 billion today, making it the highest-grossing Warner Brothers movie at the time. But the most shocking part wasn't the money. It was what happened inside the theaters. People weren't just scared. They were physically affected. Some fainted, others vomited. A few even suffered panic attacks. A Time article from that year reported that theater managers saw an average of 4 blackouts and 6 episodes of vomiting per screening. In Toronto, things got so bad that the University Theatre had to hire a full-time plumber because vomit kept clogging the sinks. Some theaters had ambulances waiting outside in case of emergencies. Others increased staff to clean up between showings. Not all of the reactions were caused by the supernatural horror. One of the most disturbing moments happened early in the movie. It wasn't a possession scene. It wasn't Regan's head spinning. It was a medical procedure. The cerebral angiography sequence, which showed a needle being inserted into Regan's neck, felt too real. Many viewers fainted just from watching it. Religious audiences had an even stronger response. Some Catholic viewers felt so disturbed that they sought out priests for guidance. A few even asked for exorcisms. The film made people question their beliefs. Some saw it as a warning. Others saw it as proof that demonic possession was real. The demand for The Exorcist became impossible to ignore. By early 1974, the film expanded into more theaters across the country. It earned $66.3 million in North America during its original run, which would be about $319 million today. Internationally, it made another $46 million, including $8.2 million from Japan in just 11 weeks. The film kept coming back to theaters over the years, pushing its total worldwide gross to $441 million. No horror movie had ever been this successful. Then came the Oscars. Horror movies were rarely nominated for major awards, but The Exorcist changed that. In April 1974, it became the first horror film ever nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. It received 10 nominations, including Best Director for William Friedkin, Best Actress for Ellen Burstyn, Best Supporting Actor for Jason Miller, and Best Supporting Actress for Linda Blair. It won 2, Best Adapted Screenplay for William Peter Blatty, and Best Sound for the terrifying audio effects that made the film so intense. It lost Best Picture to The Sting, but the nomination alone was historic. It proved that horror could be more than just cheap scares. It could be serious. It could be respected. Before The Exorcist, horror was seen as low-budget entertainment. After The Exorcist, everything changed. It became proof that horror could dominate the box office and still be taken seriously. The Exorcist is one of the most terrifying films ever made, but some of its most shocking moments never made it into the original 1973 release. One of the most infamous deleted scenes is the spider walk. In this scene, Regan McNeil, completely possessed, bends her body in an unnatural way and crawls backward down the stairs like an insect. Her head twists at an impossible angle. When she reaches the bottom, blood pours from her mouth. This horrifying sequence was filmed on April 11th, 1973. Stuntwoman Ann Miles performed the scene after 2 weeks of training. Special effects supervisor Marcel Vercouter designed a harness to assist her, but she was so skilled that she didn't even need it. Director William Friedkin had high hopes for the scene, but when he saw the final footage, he decided to cut it. The wires used to support Miles were too visible, ruining the realism. He also felt that showing such a terrifying moment too early in the film would disrupt its slow build-up. The scene remained lost for nearly 3 decades. Then, in 2000, The Exorcist, the version you've never seen, restored the spider walk with CGI enhancements. The wires were erased, and new effects made Regan's movements look even more unnatural. Blood was also added, making the moment even more disturbing. Audiences in 2000 weren't ready for it. In theaters, some people screamed while others nervously laughed. The reaction was a mix of horror and disbelief. Critics pointed out that the scene made the possession undeniable. In the original cut, the film builds slowly, leaving some doubt about whether Regan is truly possessed. But with the spider walk included, the audience sees pure evil early on. Some fans loved this change. Others thought it weakened the film's suspense. Regardless, the scene became one of the most unforgettable moments in horror history. The spider walk wasn't the only controversial moment in The Exorcist. The crucifix scene was one of the most disturbing sequences ever put on film. But the version in William Peter Blatty's 1971 novel was even more extreme. In the book, the demon forces Regan to not only stab herself with a crucifix, but also to engage in explicit self-harm. The scene describes her experiencing an orgasm while severely injuring herself, making it even more disturbing. Blatty wanted to show the full horror of possession, but bringing this moment to the screen was a challenge. Linda Blair, who played Regan, was only 14 years old at the time. Filming the scene as written in the novel was legally and ethically impossible. Friedkin had to change it. He toned it down, but even the version he filmed was shocking. Regan violently thrusts the crucifix into herself while screaming obscenities. The sequence lasts only 50 seconds, but it left an unforgettable impact. Even with the changes, Friedkin admitted he had filmed much more graphic footage but chose not to use it. He wanted to see how much he could get away with before going too far. The scene had to be disturbing without making audiences completely turn away. When The Exorcist hit theaters on December 26, 1973, the crucifix scene sparked immediate outrage. Religious groups called it blasphemous. Moral critics accused Friedkin of crossing a line. Some theaters refused to show the movie. In parts of the UK, local councils banned it completely. Even in the US, where censorship rules had relaxed after the Hays Code was abolished in 1968, the film was seen as a test of Hollywood's new creative freedom. One of the most interesting deleted scenes from The Exorcist takes place before anything terrifying happens. It follows Chris McNeil and her daughter Regan on a sightseeing trip through Washington, D.C. They visit landmarks like the Lee Mansion and Memorial Drive. Chris takes pictures while Regan plays around the massive pillars, full of energy and laughter. The moment feels light and warm, showing a mother and daughter simply enjoying each other's company. At one point, they stop to watch a soldier marching near the tomb of the unknown soldier. Regan, always full of curiosity, asks, "Mom, why do people have to die?" Chris gives a soft but sad answer. "God gets lonesome for us, Rags. He wants us back." The scene is quiet but powerful. It touches on the film's deeper spiritual themes, long before possession takes hold. This scene adds something important. It shows Chris and Regan's close bond. They joke about birthday plans. Regan talks about wanting a horse. Chris does her best to be present despite her demanding career. Their life feels normal. When the possession begins, it's not just terrifying. It's heartbreaking. The audience remembers what was lost. This sequence was removed from the theatrical version, but it makes Regan's transformation feel even more tragic. Other deleted scenes focus on Regan's early symptoms. They show how her possession wasn't sudden, but crept in over time. At first, she suffers from insomnia. She gets moody and irritable. She even snaps at her mother, which is completely unlike her. One deleted moment shows her using the Ouija board with an eerie focus. She talks to Captain Howdy, her imaginary friend. In these extra takes, her attachment to the board feels even more unsettling. The way she stares at it, the way she listens for a response, it all hints at something darker. There are also extended medical scenes that add more psychological depth. Doctors run test after test, trying to explain what's happening to her. The audience watches Regan's fear grow as she undergoes painful procedures. Chris, desperate for answers, does everything she can. These moments highlight the battle between science and faith. The doctors believe it's neurological. Chris wants to believe it's something medical, but nothing makes sense. These extra moments make it clear how terrifying it is when science has no explanation. Another key deleted moment involves early makeup tests for Pazuzu, the demon that possesses Regan. These tests were done on Eileen Dietz, who doubled for Linda Blair in certain scenes. The first designs were even more disturbing than what ended up in the film. Rotting skin, sunken eyes, deep wounds that looked both self-inflicted and supernatural. Director William Friedkin found them too exaggerated, so they weren't used in full. But the footage wasn't thrown away. Editor Bud Smith later took frames from these makeup tests and inserted them into key scenes. They appear for just a fraction of a second during Father Karras's dream, during the exorcism itself. Audiences barely noticed them at first, but they felt them. These quick, subliminal flashes of Pazuzu's face became some of the most famous moments in horror history. People didn't understand why the film unsettled them so much. These hidden images were part of the reason. The technique also sparked controversy. Some critics accused Friedkin of sneaking in subliminal messaging to manipulate viewers. He defended his choices, saying these images created a dreamlike effect. Whether intentional or not, they helped make The Exorcist one of the most psychologically disturbing films of all time. Another deleted scene takes place during the exorcism. It's a deep conversation between Father Merrin and Father Karras, right outside Regan's room. Merrin tells Karras that possession isn't just about one person. It's about making everyone around them lose faith. The demon's true goal is despair. It wants people to believe that God has abandoned them. This moment adds weight to the story. Karras, still grieving his mother's death, is struggling with his faith. He wants to believe, but doubt is eating away at him. Merrin, on the other hand, never wavers. This conversation lays the foundation for Karras's final sacrifice. When he invites Pazuzu into himself to save Regan, it's not just a desperate act, it's his way of rejecting despair. William Peter Blatty, who wrote both the novel and the screenplay, believed this scene was essential to the film's meaning. He was frustrated when Friedkin cut it to speed up the pacing. Without it, Karras's final decision still makes sense, but this scene would have made it even more powerful. There was also an alternate ending. Instead of the chilling final shot of the empty Georgetown staircase, this version follows Detective Kinderman as he visits Chris and Father Dyer. After Chris gives Dyer Father Karras's medallion, she and Regan leave. Then Kinderman does something unexpected. He invites Dyer to a movie. It's a quiet moment, but it mirrors a conversation he once had with Karras about their shared love for film. He even echoes a famous line from Casablanca. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. This ending changes the film's tone. Instead of leaving audiences with a sense of pure loss, it offers a small moment of connection. It suggests that even after tragedy, life moves forward. Friedkin ultimately chose the darker ending, but this alternate version gives the story a different kind of emotional closure. Every one of these deleted scenes adds something unique to The Exorcist. Some make the horror feel more personal, some add deeper meaning, and some, like the quick flashes of Pazuzu's face, make the fear more psychological. During the filming of The Exorcist in 1972, something strange happened. A fire broke out on set, destroying nearly everything except one room, Regan's bedroom. The exact cause was traced to a bird flying into a circuit box. But the untouched state of the bedroom raised unsettling questions. This was the room where the film's most terrifying scenes were shot, the place where the exorcism took place. The unexplained nature of the fire led many to believe the set was cursed. The fire delayed production by 6 weeks. Tension among the cast and crew grew worse when accidents started happening. A carpenter lost his thumb. A lighting technician lost his toe. At the request of the production team, Jesuit priest Father Thomas Birmingham was brought in to bless the set. He refused to perform an actual exorcism, saying it wasn't necessary, but he led a prayer for protection. Some found comfort in this. Others remained uneasy. Things only got stranger when the film premiered in Rome in 1973. On opening night, lightning struck a church near the theater. The timing seemed too perfect to be a coincidence. By then, rumors of a curse had already spread. There were other tragedies as well. During filming and shortly after, 9 people connected to The Exorcist died. Linda Blair's grandfather, the assistant cameraman's newborn baby, even the man responsible for refrigerating the set. But the most shocking death was Jack McGowan, the Irish actor who played Burke Dennings. Just a week after filming his scenes, he died of influenza. These deaths created fear among the cast and crew. Ellen Burstyn, who played Regan's mother, later said the atmosphere on set felt deeply disturbing. Director William Friedkin brought Father Birmingham back for another blessing. The deaths didn't stop, but they fueled the legend of The Exorcist being one of Hollywood's most cursed films. Years later, another shocking story emerged. Paul Bateson, who had a small role in the film as a radiologic technologist, was convicted of murder in 1979. He was found guilty of killing journalist Addison Verrill, but authorities suspected him of more. He was linked to the Bag Murders, a series of killings in which victims were dismembered and dumped in plastic bags across Manhattan. Though he was never charged for these crimes, Bateson reportedly boasted about them in prison. His connection to The Exorcist made the film's dark history even more unsettling. William Friedkin, fascinated by the case, later used elements of it in his 1980 film Cruising. Despite its troubled production, The Exorcist became one of the biggest horror films of all time, but no sequel ever managed to capture its power. Exorcist II: The Heretic came out in 1977, and audiences hated it. The story tried to mix religious themes with science, but ended up being confusing. Warner Brothers executives were so embarrassed by early screenings that they were reportedly chased down the street by angry moviegoers. The film was a massive failure. In 1990, The Exorcist III was released. Written and directed by William Peter Blatty, the author of the original Exorcist novel, the film had a darker, more psychological approach. It was better received than its predecessor, but it still couldn't match the impact of the first film. More recent sequels, like The Exorcist, Believer in 2023, have struggled as well. They often rely on overused horror tricks, instead of the deep emotional and religious themes that made the original so terrifying. William Friedkin wanted nothing to do with any of these sequels. He refused every offer to return to the franchise. He once called Exorcist II the worst 40 minutes of film I have ever seen. To him, the story had already been told. What made the original so powerful was its realism. Friedkin had spent time researching Catholic exorcisms and medical procedures, making sure every detail felt believable. Later films abandoned that approach in favor of exaggerated horror. Friedkin believed any continuation would only weaken the original's legacy. In 2010, The Exorcist was added to the U.S. Library of Congress's National Film Registry, recognizing it as a culturally significant film. It was already historic for being the first horror movie nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards in 1974. The film's impact reached beyond horror. It reflected deeper fears about faith, science, and the unknown. When it was released in 1973, The Exorcist didn't just scare audiences, it shocked them. People fainted in theaters. Some vomited. Others ran out in terror. Religious leaders condemned it, saying it was dangerous. Warner Brothers used these reactions in their marketing, making the film even more infamous. But the fear ran deeper than just the film itself. The 1970s were a time of crisis. Watergate had destroyed trust in government. The Vietnam War had divided the country. Traditional religious beliefs were being questioned. Many older viewers saw the film as a nightmare version of their biggest fear, losing their children to an unknown evil.